The second session of our little mini course on how to meditate on the Lamrim. So let's again begin with prayers. And if you can, if you're able to imagine the Buddha in front of you, or you can just focus on the we have many statues here of the Buddha. So you can just think of one of them or all of them. They are all Buddhas. They're all equally enlightened and having the same knowledge and qualities and realizations as Shakyamuni Buddha. So there's actually many Buddhas, many enlightened beings. They're all totally dedicated to helping each of us and every other living being in the universe with love and compassion, similar to the way parents feel with their children, but millions of times greater than that and more pure, without any attachment or self-centeredness or ego, just totally dedicated to helping us without asking anything in return. And they'll continue helping us however long it takes until every living being has become free of their suffering and has reached enlightenment as well. So their compassion and love and skillful means and wisdom, these excellent qualities are really amazing, really wonderful. So try to feel that you are in the presence of the Buddha, of numerous Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and try to take refuge sincerely from your heart, not just for your own well-being, but for the benefit of all other living beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then the 7 limbs, which contain various practices for accumulating merit and purifying our negativities. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. The mandala offering, another excellent way to accumulate merit, virtue. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Okay, so once again, generate the motivation to be here, participate in this session for the benefit of other people and beings, as many as you can think of, all living beings if possible. So really wish that what we're doing here will be beneficial for ourselves, of course, but also for everyone else, all other living beings. Okay, so we're going through the Lamrim, looking at some of the main points and meditating on some of the topics of the Lamrim, the path to enlightenment. So texts on the Lamrim were written for those who want to become enlightened, fully enlightened, for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's like the intended audience of the Lamrim. And so the Lamrim texts are showing us what we need to do to get from where we are now, unenlightened beings, all the way to that goal of enlightenment, Buddhahood. And the whole reason, the whole purpose of becoming enlightened isn't just to sit back and enjoy ourselves and, have a good time, retire, enjoy, but it's to benefit others. That's what a Buddha does. A Buddha is working constantly, every minute, every second, non-stop, 24/7, to benefit all sentient beings, not excluding anybody. And there's just so many beings that they can't be counted. So Buddha has a lot of work to do. But they also have a lot of energy. So it's not that they get tired and then they have to have a coffee break and a vacation and go for a holiday. So they're just having incredible energy because of all the merit, all the virtue, all the good deeds that they've been collecting on their way to enlightenment. They just create this huge amount of merit, virtue, and then that keeps them going once they're enlightened to work for the benefit of all beings. But it is important to understand that is the reason, the purpose for becoming enlightened. So we shouldn't have a selfish motivation, just wanting to enjoy enlightenment for ourselves. I mean, we are selfish. We have selfishness. It's just part of our way of being as unenlightened beings. We are selfish. But we can work on that. We can reduce selfishness and eventually be free of it altogether so that we just have all this energy to work for others. So this morning we looked at the first of the 3 sections of the Lamrim. So the Lamrim is roughly divided into these 3 sections sometimes it's called the small scope or the initial level, and then the intermediate scope, the middling level, and then the great scope, the advanced level. So we just covered the first of those three this morning. And the basic idea, the overall idea, the essence of this initial level of the Lamrim is to realize our life isn't going to last forever. This life we have, it's actually a very fortunate life because, one of the earliest topics of the Lamrim is the precious human life, precious human rebirth. I didn't talk about that this morning, but that's kind of like a foundational meditation where this is something taught by the Buddha. The Buddha talked about this and pointed out that, it's very rare to be born as a human being compared with all the other living beings there are. The number of human beings is relatively small. And on top of that, if you also have the chance to learn the Dharma, the path to enlightenment, then that's even more rare. Even fewer beings have that opportunity. And so it's really, really rare and really special to have a human life and to have the opportunity to learn the Dharma and at least start practicing the Dharma. And so he says, while you have this opportunity, don't waste it. It would be a great tragedy to waste this life because it's not going to last forever, right? We don't have forever to do everything that could be done in our life. We have a limited amount of time, maybe 100 years at the most, maybe a bit more, a bit less. But that's, a limited amount of time. And there's a lot to do in the Dharma, to really develop our mind and at least start going in the direction of enlightenment. And so it would be a great loss, a great tragedy to have this opportunity and not make use of it, to at least start learning the Dharma and practicing the Dharma. So that's the idea of the precious human life. And so, so having this precious human life, then how to make the best use of it. And then in the Lamrim it goes through these three levels of practice. So the initial level we did this morning, basically it's about thinking that this life we have, yes, it's very precious, but it's limited. It's not going to last forever, and it's going to come to an end. And when it does come to an end, we're going to take another life, another rebirth. And that's not something we have any choice over. It's not that, when we die, someone's going to ask us, where do you want to go next? Where do you want to be born? And we get to choose. It's not like that. Although I heard, there's some new agey sort of teachers and groups who think that we do have a choice. But that doesn't make any sense to me, because if there was a choice, why would anyone choose to go to hell? Or or be born in Gaza? There's lots of horrible places that people are born where they have just so much suffering, so many problems. Why would anyone choose such a life if it is a question of choice? So Buddhism says, no, it's not our choice, it's our karma, mainly our karma, what kind of karma we've created, and also the state of mind we have at the time of death. That's also a very important factor. If you die with a positive state of mind, a virtuous state of mind, like taking refuge, generating compassion, love, bodhicitta. So if you can die like that, then you'll have a fortunate rebirth. But if you die feeling angry, hateful, clinging, like clinging to all the family members and your money and everything you're leaving behind, you're really frightened. So if the mind is negative and disturbed at the time of death, then that will ripen one of our negative karmic seeds to throw us into an unfortunate rebirth. So the state of mind we have as we die is really important. So that's another important reason why we need to prepare ourselves, learn how to manage our mind, how to keep our mind positive so we can be in a positive state of mind as we die, and that will enable us to have a fortunate rebirth. But anyway, we are going to die and then have another rebirth, and if we did have a choice, we would definitely not want to be born in one of the unfortunate rebirths like hell or hungry ghost or animal. We'd like a good rebirth. So if that's the case, then what do we do? How do we make sure that we do have a fortunate rebirth? So the solutions are twofold. One is taking refuge, generating this faith, this confidence in the Buddha, relying on the Buddha, his teachings, his Sangha. So taking refuge in the three jewels and living our life under the guidance of the three jewels. And then karma. The main practice really is karma, being careful about the actions we do, trying to avoid negative karma as much as we can, trying to create virtuous karma as much as we can. And, we do sometimes create negative karma. We also have negative karma we created earlier in our life. So there's the practice of purification. We can do purification practice to purify our negative karma, clear that away. So that's something I'm going to be talking about on Tuesday night. If anyone's interested, hasn't heard about that. Purification, very, very important practice. So anyway, with these meditations on the initial level, we're doing the things we need to do to ensure a good rebirth. When this life ends, we go to the next life, we'll have a good rebirth. But then somebody might wonder, but wait a minute, I thought what we want to do is attain enlightenment, Buddhahood. We want to become Buddhas and not just have a good rebirth. So why is it that somebody who wants to attain enlightenment needs to meditate on these things and practice these things? Yeah? Anyone want to give an answer to that? If somebody asked you that question, I just want to become a Buddha. I don't want to get a good rebirth. I don't want to have to worry about karma and refuge and all the things. Just show me the way to enlightenment. That's for me. So what would you say to that? Any idea?
Hi, Venerable. If I reflect on what you said this morning, is actually to train ourselves to familiarize ourselves with Buddha's teaching and contemplate it and get that experiential reflections. So this is how, through all this, sorry, back to your question. Sorry, can you refresh your question? Suddenly, can you refresh your question? Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, the question is, if our goal is enlightenment, Buddhahood, becoming a Buddha, so we can help all sentient beings. So why do we need to meditate on these topics of this initial level, the small scope, which are for the purpose of getting good rebirths in our next life?
So, as you said this morning, is to familiarize our mind with the values and teachings from Buddha.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But still somebody might say, but I can do that just by, meditating on bodhicitta and aspiring to become a Buddha. I can get familiar with the Buddha's teachings in that way. I don't need to do these things.
Yeah, hi, Venerable. If I may try. I think the path to enlightenment takes many lifetimes. So we need to get a good rebirth in order to continue practice the path. Because there are many people who are reborn as human, may not have a chance to even get in touch with Buddha teachings.
Yeah, that's the right answer. If we aspire to become a Buddha, fully enlightened, so we can help all sentient beings, but in most cases, that's going to take a long time, not just one lifetime. There's some stories like Milarepa, a few kind of very special people who reached enlightenment within that lifetime, but they're very rare. In fact, I once heard the Dalai Lama say that's like 1 in a million or 1 in 2 million. So it's very rare for someone to get all the way to enlightenment in this one lifetime. So for most of us, it's going to take multiple lives. The Buddha himself, he spent many, many lifetimes practicing in order to become enlightened. So to think that we can do it this lifetime is, a little bit ambitious and unrealistic. So most probably it will take multiple lives. So then if we have these many lifetimes to come to reach enlightenment, we have to make sure that in our future lives we will have good rebirths with the opportunity to meet the Buddha's teachings, right? We don't want to be born as an animal or in hell or as a hungry ghost. That would be just no way we could work for enlightenment in those situations. So we'd just be spending a lot of time suffering and not getting any closer to enlightenment. So we have to at least make sure we're born as a human being, or another alternative is Pure Land. Like a lot of people, it's a very popular practice for Chinese people and so on, to pray to go to Amitabha's Pure Land. So Amitabha's Pure Land, Sukhavati, is also an ideal environment in which to continue to follow the path to enlightenment. That's the whole purpose of going to Amitabha's Pure Land. It's not just to enjoy ourselves, like a holiday, but it's to continue to listen to teachings given by Amitabha Buddha, other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, continue to practice, cultivate your bodhicitta, and finish your work for the attainment of enlightenment. So, we have to make sure that we have fortunate rebirths, good rebirths, with the conditions to continue our practice towards enlightenment. That's why we need to learn these things and make sure we're creating the right karma and we avoid unfortunate rebirths in our future lives. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's possible. Sometimes people think, we can skip this part of the Lamrim. We don't need those teachings and practices. We're just going to, jump over those and go right to the great scope, the Bodhisattva's path, and focus all our attention on that. But that's a little risky. We do have to make sure we have a good understanding of these points and a good practice of these points. They are like the basis, the foundation for the Bodhisattva's path. Was that an agreement or a disagreement? Okay, now let's move on to the intermediate level, sometimes called the middle scope or middling scope. Okay, so this is the second main section of the Lamrim. So basically what this one is all about is it's built on the previous one. With the previous one, we make sure we have good rebirths in our future life. But then having a good rebirth, even a precious human rebirth, or even in one of the celestial realms, the Deva realms, we're still in samsara. We're still in this situation called samsara, or cyclic existence. And what that means is we're still stuck, like on a Ferris wheel, like that, what do you call that thing? Big Ferris wheel, is there a name for that? Huh? Singapore flyover, flyer, Singapore flyer, okay. It's like a big Ferris wheel. Yeah, so it's, going on a Ferris wheel is a pleasant experience usually, but if you got stuck on the Ferris wheel and you couldn't get off and you just kept going around and around and around, it wouldn't be fun, would it? That wouldn't be an ideal situation. Well, samsara is like that, yeah? We keep going around and around and around through the same experiences. We're born, we live our life, we die, again we're born and we live another life and we die, and then we're born again, we live another life and we die, and we just keep going around and around and around and around. We don't really get anywhere. And then many of the experiences we have while we're in samsara, in the middle of one life, are painful, really bad, especially if we're born in the unfortunate realms. But even in a human realm, yeah, even as human beings, this is considered a fortunate life, but we still have a lot of problems. Yeah, we have this body that gets sick, that gets injured, that experiences pain and discomfort and tiredness, especially when you get older. Yeah, and things are falling apart, breaking down, not working anymore. So, and then with people, what am I trying to say? Relationships with other people, yeah, those often go really badly, and people get angry at us, or we get angry at them. They hurt us, we hurt them. So quarrels and conflicts with people, and so there's problems. Everybody, every human being goes through different problems in their life. And so there's lots of problems in samsara, and it's definitely not an ideal situation. And so the intermediate level is all about recognizing the problems, the suffering, the disadvantages of samsara, so that we generate the wish to get out, which is called renunciation, or the determination to be free. So that's the attitude that says, I want to free myself from samsara. I don't want to keep doing this again and again and again. I want to get out. I want to get off this Ferris wheel. That's the basic idea. So the first main step here is to develop renunciation, the wish to be free of samsara. And we do that by contemplating the various types of suffering, or dukkha. The Buddha talked about these in the Four Noble Truths. The first Noble Truth, the truth of dukkha. So he mentioned many different kinds of dukkha: birth, sickness, aging, death, not getting what you want, meeting undesired experiences, having to separate from those people and beings you don't want to separate from, but you have no choice. And just having these aggregates, this body-mind combination that we have, just this itself is suffering, is dukkha. Now, the word suffering isn't really ideal. That's the kind of common English term for dukkha. But yeah, it has sort of the connotation of something really terrible, really bad, really horrible. But dukkha just includes any unpleasant experience that we may have. Like right now, you may be feeling a little bit warm, like it's too warm in here, or maybe too cold for you. So being a little bit too hot or a little bit too cold, or having an ache or pain here and there, being tired, being hungry, you didn't eat enough for lunch, or maybe you ate too much for lunch, or kind of full. So you're feeling sleepy. Yeah, so even these kind of relatively small problems that we experience like every day, probably numerous times every day, we have some kind of unpleasant experience, either with our body or with our mind or both. So these are also included in dukkha. So a better translation into English would be unsatisfactoriness. Anything that's not completely satisfying and ideal and as we want things to be. So yeah, there's a broad range of different experiences that are called dukkha, that are included in dukkha. So the point is, as long as we're in samsara, we will experience dukkha, unpleasant, unwanted experiences, again and again and again and again. And of course there's times when we have pleasure, we have happiness, good times. You know, we may feel like, oh, everything's perfect right now, everything is wonderful right now. So we have times like that. But do they last? How long do they last? Those good times. Yeah, maybe a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. But sooner or later, things change. Things will change. Those good times will come to an end, and something will go wrong. Some kind of problem will happen. So that's the nature of samsara, is we just keep running into problems again and again and again and again. And whatever happiness, whatever pleasure, good experiences we have are temporary. They last only a limited amount of time, and then they disappear. We can't keep them going indefinitely. They're temporary. So, yeah. So this is, with this first part of the intermediate level, we meditate on the different kinds of suffering, like there's 3 types of suffering and 8 types of suffering and 6 types of suffering, and then there's sufferings, dukkha, in each realm, right? So each of the different realms of rebirth has its own types of suffering that we meditate on. So the point is kind of depressing. I mean, some people find this kind of meditation depressing. Nobody likes to think about suffering. But the point isn't to become depressed, okay? That's not what the Buddha intended. The point is to just recognize that we are in a very imperfect situation, and we can get ourselves out of this situation. But we have to recognize, we have to realize the reality of this situation, so we have the energy to get ourselves out. Otherwise, it's a bit like, let's say there's a person who's been thrown into prison. And prison is, usually a pretty awful situation. Nobody likes being in prison. We like freedom. We like to go where we want and do what we want, be with our friends. And there you are, locked up in a cell, controlled by other people. You have no freedom. So usually prison is a pretty miserable situation. And people who are in prison just want to get out. That's all they can think of is, when am I going to get out of here? But it can happen that maybe somebody gets used to being in prison, they get kind of institutionalized, and they start to feel, it's not so bad here. I get 3 meals a day, and I have a bed, and I don't have to go and work for somebody and worry about paying taxes. So it can happen that somebody might think, oh, well, I'll just stay here. And kind of not recognize the disadvantages, the bad side of being in prison. And then even if they have the opportunity, they may say, no, it's okay, I want to stay here. It sounds kind of crazy. but it can happen. And so, yeah, it's necessary for that person to realize that, yeah, maybe you can see some advantages to being here, but it's much better out there. You can go where you want, you can do what you want, you can be with your family and your friends. So we need to point out the disadvantages of being in prison and the advantages of being out, being free, so that this person generates the wish to get out. So it's like that with this, samsara is like a prison in a way. It is like being in a prison. We're not free, yeah? Even though, you can buy airplane tickets and go all over the world and buy anything you want. There's tons of malls in Singapore, so many shops you can buy things, so many restaurants you can eat at. So it may seem like we have a lot of freedom, but in a way we don't have freedom, because we're not free to enjoy the real peace and happiness of nirvana and enlightenment, which is far greater than any pleasure we may experience in our life. Yeah? So we need to recognize that we are not free, we are not in an ideal situation, so that we generate the wish to be free. And that's the reason, that's the purpose for meditating on the different kinds of suffering. So it's not to make ourselves depressed, but to make ourselves energized, get energy to do what we have to do to get out. So then, the second main part of this is, what do we do to get out? How do we get out of here? What is the escape route? And so there we meditate on two main things. One is the causes of samsara, like why are we stuck here? What's keeping us stuck in samsara? It's mainly two things that Buddha pointed out: delusions. Delusions are mental states, mental factors that are deluded, that are not seeing things accurately, but seeing things incorrectly and making things, they make our mind disturbed and distorted. So those are things like hatred and greed and jealousy and ignorance about the true nature of things. That's the main problem. The main problem that keeps us in samsara is we're not seeing things correctly, like our own self, I. We have a feeling there's an I somewhere inside of here, and we usually don't question the sense of I that we have. We really believe there's an I, a me inside of there. And in fact, the I we think is there isn't really there. It's like a hallucination, a figment of our imagination, just something created by our mind, but not really there. So this was the Buddha's big discovery that kind of was revolutionary, because I don't think any other religion or philosophy has such a radical view of selflessness or emptiness. But Buddha discovered that's the main problem, is believing in this seemingly real I and being attached to our I, and then acting. Everything we do is from that point of view, trying to gratify our I, keep our I happy, get whatever it wants, and then push away whatever it doesn't want, getting angry at enemies, harming enemies, and so on. So all our mistakes, all our non-virtuous actions are coming from that delusion, believing in a real I, which in fact isn't there. So that's the main thing that keeps us in samsara, that ignorance about our I, but we also have ignorance about everyone else and everything else that we need to clear up. So our basic problem is we're just not seeing things correctly as they are. And so we need to recognize that, those causes or those factors that keep us in samsara. One is delusions, and then karma. So karma, when we create karma, we do actions, create karma based on ignorance and other delusions, then we are creating the cause for more samsara, taking rebirth in samsara, experiencing samsara. So those are the two main things that keep us stuck, delusions and karma. So those are the things we have to eliminate, we have to be free of if we want to be free of samsara. And the way to do that is by practicing the three, what are called the three higher trainings. Those are the three main practices for attaining freedom, liberation, nirvana. They are ethics, living ethically, refraining from non-virtuous, harmful actions like killing and so on. And then concentration, training our mind to stay concentrated, focused. And then wisdom. Wisdom is the main factor. Wisdom is the direct antidote to ignorance. It's like the medicine, the cure that eliminates our ignorance. Wisdom means seeing things correctly, seeing things as they are. So that's the main thing that will enable us to be free and attain liberation, nirvana. But wisdom isn't very easy to develop. We need a really sharp, clear, focused state of mind, concentration. So that's why wisdom needs to be practiced on the basis of concentration. And then for concentration, we need ethics. We need to keep our behavior kind of subdued, tamed, not creating a lot of negative, non-virtuous things. So all three of these are essential, and they kind of build on each other. So ethics is the foundation on top of which we can develop concentration and then wisdom. So we learn about those, we meditate on those, we practice those, and in that way we can attain liberation or nirvana. So that's just an overview of this middle scope or intermediate level. And I was thinking to lead a meditation, maybe just for a short time, one of the topics from this section, to look at the delusions and the faults of the delusions, to recognize that we have within our mind certain factors that are harmful. They are the cause of suffering for us. And that might seem obvious, but we don't always realize this, like sometimes something will happen, somebody will do something and we get angry at them, and we may feel completely justified in being angry. I should be angry at this person because they did this terrible thing and I have to teach them a lesson. And so anger comes up and we get totally caught up in our anger and even act it out as if it's the right thing to do. And that shows we haven't recognized that anger is actually faulty. It's actually a cause of suffering. We're actually creating suffering for ourselves every time we get angry, and don't try to manage our anger, but act it out. Same with attachment, right? We also get caught up in attachment. Oh, we fall in love with somebody and we think, oh, this person will make me so happy, and we get carried away with our attachment thinking that's the cause of happiness. That's going to bring us happiness. But in fact, attachment, it's fine to have friends, of course, it's fine to have relationships, but attachment, the state of mind of attachment and clinging, that is actually a cause of suffering. So we sometimes get caught up in our afflictions and our delusions, thinking this is fine, this is okay, everyone else is doing this, and not realizing that these are actually bringing us suffering. So it's really important to recognize that delusions are actually faulty, counterproductive to our happiness. So I thought, let's do a little bit of meditation on that. And if you're feeling tired or achy, or You would like to stand up and stretch your legs, your arms for a few minutes. Because I don't want you to fall asleep, and I'm sure you don't either. You don't really want to fall asleep during meditation. So when you're ready, you can start to arrange your body in a good position for meditation. Trying to keep your back straight. And you might want to keep your eyes open a little bit, because closing them can lead to sleepiness, especially on a warm afternoon, on a full stomach. So, but keeping the eyes open a little so there's some light coming in, and looking down so you don't see things that would distract your attention. So that can be helpful to stay awake and alert during meditation. And you might want to remember the Buddha in the space in front, or focus on the images of the Buddha in the altar in front and around. It's helpful to feel the presence of the Buddha, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that they are there, aware of us with compassion and love, and happy that we're meditating and wanting to give us whatever support, whatever help they can in our practice of meditation. Okay, so bring to mind one of the delusions that often comes up in your mind. It could be anger, or attachment, or jealousy, or pride. So those are among the main delusions, the most frequent and problematic ones. So bring to mind one of those that you have experience of, you notice in your mind. Then I'm going to go through some points mentioned in the Buddhist scriptures about how delusions are harmful and the cause of problems rather than the cause of happiness. So as I go through these, just check to see if it's true that this particular delusion you have problems with, it does bring these problems. So one is that when they arise in our mind, when the delusion arises in our mind, it makes the mind disturbed, unpeaceful, agitated. Just check to see if that's true. And then secondly, delusions cause us to see things in distorted, exaggerated ways. So when we have anger or hatred for a person, we tend to see them as totally 100% bad, when in fact nobody's that bad. And with attachment causes us to see the object, person, or whatever it is, as 100% wonderful, fantastic, which is also not really true. There are faults in that person or that object. So we see things in a kind of distorted way, exaggerated way, not a realistic way. Just check to see if that's true. And then another problem is that when a delusion comes up in our mind and it gets really strong, we may act it out in our words, in our actions, and create negative karma, like speaking harshly or telling lies or acting deceptively, even causing harm to others. So just check to see if that's true, that you sometimes act in a negative way, in a non-virtuous way, under the influence of a delusion. And when we do create negative actions, negative karma, and we don't do anything to purify those actions will bring suffering and problems in the future, in this life, and in future lives. We can also see in the world around us, both people we know and also in the news, we can see how when people get caught up in a delusion, like anger, greed, and so on, then they can cause a lot of problems for other people as well as for themselves. Even things like wars or violence, terrorism, injustice, abuse, and so on. So in fact, all the problems in society and all the problems in the world, if we trace them back, where do they come from? What causes them? We can find delusions in people's minds. So those are faults of delusions that we can see in the here and now. But Buddhist texts talk about other more subtle faults, like delusions keep us trapped in the prison of samsara. They don't allow us to become free, and attain nirvana or enlightenment. They also are obstacles to the development of good qualities and realizations, like increasing compassion, love, wisdom, and so on. So they hinder us from following the path, attaining higher states of mind along the path. So having contemplated these points with respect to that particular delusion that you notice in yourself, see if you can come to the conclusion that this state of mind, this mental state, even though it may seem to bring some benefit in this life, or it may not seem to be so bad, it's actually very harmful for me. And it's something I need to work on and learn to manage, learn to overcome, and not let myself be taken over by it. So I'm keeping these meditations a bit short because I don't know if everyone is able to meditate for a long time. So I'm just giving you an idea of how to do a meditation. But if you're meditating on your own, if you're doing a Lamrim meditation on your own, then you're free to spend as much time as you wish or as little time as you wish. You can make your own schedule and according to your ability as well, and so on. And it's quite normal to experience doubt, yeah, when you're meditating on something from the teachings, Buddha's teachings, the Lamrim and so on. If you have doubt, if you think, I'm not sure about that, I'm not sure if that's true or not, that's fine. It's natural to have doubt, and it's not wrong, it's not bad. And remember, the Buddha did teach us to check things for ourselves, to investigate things for ourselves. So if we do have doubt, it's good to investigate your doubt. So sometimes meditation can take the form of a kind of internal dialogue, not a fight, but a dialogue, a friendly dialogue. Okay. So the Buddha says this, and my mind says this. So let's look at those two alternatives and see which one makes more sense. And so that way you're sort of investigating your doubt. Why do I think this way? What are my reasons? Goodness. Sounded like it was right back there. Yeah, what are my reasons for thinking that way? Because, sometimes we just have these ideas. We have these thoughts, these ideas that maybe we've had them for a long time and we never really questioned them. Or maybe we heard them from friends or our parents or someone else, and we just accept them and never really investigated them. Yeah? And so when we do, we say, why do I think this way? What's my reason for thinking this way? We may realize we don't have any good reason. Yeah? So then we have doubt about our own ideas. So it's good to investigate both our doubts, our own ideas about things, but also what the Buddha's teachings say, and just compare the two, and then decide which one makes more sense, which one is more beneficial, which one leads to good results, to happiness, or to more suffering, more problems. So this is something you can do during analytical meditation, and you may need to do a number of sessions of meditation on a particular topic, especially if you have doubt like that, in order to resolve the doubt. And if you can't do that on your own, if you just keep going around in circles with your doubts, then check with a teacher or a more experienced student. Yeah, talk with somebody else who can help you resolve your doubt. Because doubt can actually be a hindrance. It's one of the hindrances to concentration that the Buddha mentioned. So if we have a doubt and then we just keep going around and around and around in circles, we get stuck in our practice and we're not able to move forward. So it's important to investigate your doubts, try to resolve your doubts, and find a solution to them. Any questions before I move on?
It's quite difficult to concentrate. Venerable, it is rather difficult to concentrate because there's a lot of thinking, and I've never practiced meditation in this particular manner. It's very difficult for me because I used to do the stabilizing part, which is very calm, and I concentrate on what I want to do, and I'm very focused. But for this, I have to think, so it's totally different.
Actually, for me, my experience is this kind of meditation is easier for me because I have a very analytical mind, a very, discursive mind. I think a lot. And so, in the beginning, of course, it was hard to stay concentrated, but, it's easier for me to think. Of course, you have to stay focused on this topic and not be thinking about all kinds of other things. But I could spend a lot of time thinking about these topics. But it probably, this is going back 50 years when I first learned, it probably did take me time and also conducive circumstances, living in Nepal and being in a monastery or being in Laudo retreat center, being in very special circumstances that I learned how to do this kind of meditation. But for me, it's easier than focusing on just one object. That's much harder to stop the thinking. I'm always thinking. So if at least I can use my thinking to understand the Dharma. And so everyone's mind is different, yeah? Everyone has different experiences because of the way the mind works. So, ideally when doing analytical meditation, there should be concentration in the sense that you want to keep your mind on the topic and not going here and there and everywhere else. So we need to stay concentrated on this topic that we're meditating on. So that we need that much concentration. But then within that, we are thinking, we are contemplating, we are reflecting on, we're bringing in different ideas. And I think it does take time. It may not be easy to do in the beginning. It takes time to learn how to do that. And it's good to be in a retreat situation where you can just focus on practice and you have people guiding you. That's why I mentioned the Kopan course. Some of you have gone. Have you been to the 1-month November course in Kopan Monastery? Yeah. So there you're in a kind of very special environment and you don't have to go to work and you don't have your phone. And so you can just focus on the Lamrim, and then there are people guiding the meditation, so you can have a nice experience with that. But yeah, I think it may take time to learn how to do this. So don't worry if you find it difficult right now. It may just take more time. And also, yeah, if you're used to kind of meditation where you're just focusing on one object, like the breath, and then to switch to this kind of meditation, maybe that's challenging as well, because it's very different from what you're used to. And I sometimes have friends whose main tradition is the Theravada tradition, where they, and some of you even say, we don't have analytical meditation. We don't do analytical meditation in our tradition. But I think that's not completely true. I think they may not use that term, analytical meditation, but I think there's some forms of meditation in the Theravada tradition that are like this. For example, metta meditation, loving kindness meditation. So there you are bringing to mind different people, different beings in different directions, here and there, and north and south and above and below, and generating this feeling of loving kindness and then sending it to them. Yeah, so that's kind of like analytical meditation, because you're not just focusing on one single object like the breath. You're focusing on different objects, moving your mind around. And also, yeah, there's certain reflections, like reflecting on the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the three jewels. So there's meditations where you do that. And that's also like kind of analytical meditation. So, but it's used a lot in our tradition, in the Lamrim tradition. Anyone else?
Venerable, just as a recap, when we meditate on delusion, right? Let's say the delusion is anger. Do we meditate on the theoretical concept of anger, or do we meditate on a real life incident that we ourselves encountered and try to unpeel the incident? Then, if it's the latter, the worry is that when I go back into that real life incident, I get myself sucked into that incident again. Then it becomes, why am I reliving the anger again? So what should be the correct way of doing it? Thanks for your guidance.
Well, I think it's good to meditate on an actual experience of anger when you were caught up in that anger, because then if you're looking at that, you're able to see what kind of effect it had on your mind, like, disturbing your mind, making your mind disturbed and unpeaceful, and how it affected your behavior towards other people and so on. So then it's more clear, it's easier to see how this anger brings problems and not good solutions, but problems. But you have to be able to do it at a time when your mind is calmed down, right? So one way, usually when we get angry and we're all caught up in our anger, at that time it's difficult to sit down and meditate. It's just too, So it's better to calm down, find some way to calm, maybe go for a run, go jogging, get yourself tired out. But anyway, do something to help the anger calm down, cool down. And then when you can be in a more calm state of mind and no longer, caught up in the anger, then do this kind of meditation and, analyze that experience of anger and try to recognize its faults, the disadvantages, how it's harmful, not helpful. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, if you're just thinking about anger out there, it's not as effective. It's more effective. You're looking at your own mind, your own experience.
Venerable, thanks for your guidance. Just to add on to this topic, does it help if I do it like the way little children ask questions? Because I ever encountered before, I explained, they ask a simple question like, why is the ocean blue? So when we try to answer that, they will ask again, why? But why? So you ask, you explain again, they'll ask deeper about why. So in this way we analyze the incident of anger, right? Does it help if you keep on asking why? So I wonder if it's one technique to study that, yeah, as we analyze it. Thanks for your guidance.
Yeah. Well, I think, if you find that helpful, if you find it effective, then I think that's fine. I don't think there's just one way to do Lamrim meditations, that everybody has to do exactly the same way. But I think each person, because we have different minds, different experiences, different ways of thinking, so we have to take the Lamrim topics, understand what they're all about, but then work with them within our mind and use our own thoughts and our own experiences and our own way of thinking to make sense of them, as long as we're coming to the right conclusion. That's the important thing. Yeah, we're trying to reach the point where, like with this one, we're trying to recognize that delusions are not helpful and they're just harmful. They have all these faults, all these bad results, bad consequences that they bring. They're not good for me at all. So we're trying to become convinced of the faultiness, the harmfulness of delusions, so that even when we find ourselves in a situation and anger is coming up or attachment is coming up or something else is coming up and we may feel it's the right way to be, it's the right way to respond, we'll say, no, wait a minute, but anger has all these faults, all these problems, so that we'll do something about our anger instead of just letting ourselves be angry and act it out. We'll apply solutions to, or remedies to, overcome the anger. So that's where we're trying to get. That's the desired result. So as long as you're getting to the desired result, how you get there is fine. Just like if you want to go to Orchard Road, there's lots of different ways to go to Orchard Road, okay? And you can't say everybody has to go the same way, right? But you go whatever way works best for you. The long road, the short road, up on top of ground, underground, whatever, bus, MRT, taxi, as long as you reach that destination, that's the important thing. So, yeah, so I think if you find your own way of doing the meditation that works for you and helps you reach that goal, then that's fine. Yeah, it's really, this particular meditation is very important, especially with things like anger, because, yeah, we find ourselves in these situations where suddenly anger is coming up in our mind, like a volcano erupting. And if we haven't thought about the faults of anger, the disadvantages of anger, then we'll just completely go with it and react, get angry, and then maybe create some bad karma. But if we've heard about these teachings and we've meditated on them and we can see the point, yes, it's true, anger is harmful, then we'll be able to remember that and say to ourselves, no, I shouldn't let myself get angry. That isn't right. That will just bring more suffering, more problems. So that's the desired result, to get to that point. And eventually, you become so convinced of that even just a tiny spark of anger comes up in your mind and you immediately recognize, like the red light going off, danger, danger. You won't let yourself, you won't feed it at all. You'll immediately manage it, deal with it in a skillful way rather than acting it out. And then eventually, if you keep following the path, you get to the point where you don't even get angry in the first place. Yeah? I don't know if you heard this one story of one of the Buddha's past lives. He was a meditator living in the forest, and his main practice was patience. His name was Kshantivadan, I think, which means something like teacher of patience. And one day this king came to the forest with his harem. He had a number of wives, and they were just enjoying themselves in the forest. He fell asleep, and his wives kind of went off for a walk, and they encountered this meditator, and they were very interested in what he was doing. They sat down and were talking to him. And in the meantime, the king woke up and found his wives were gone and went running after them, and he found them talking to this meditator. And he got so jealous and angry. And he, I don't know if he himself did it or he asked his guards to do it. They started cutting up the meditator with swords, just chopping off his limbs. And the meditator, he'd been practicing patience and working on his anger, and he was able to not respond with anger, even in this, horrible situation, right? He didn't do anything wrong, and here he is being chopped up. But he was able to remain patient and not get angry, because it just shows if you really work on your mind and use, good techniques, and even in such a situation, you're able to not get angry. And he felt compassion for the king, thinking, oh, this poor king, he's creating such bad karma. So he wasn't concerned about himself, but concerned about others. You heard that story? Kind of no? Kshantivadan. Yeah, so hopefully that won't happen to us. We won't be tested like that. But it's possible. The Buddha is beyond anger. He doesn't get angry. So it's possible to free the mind from anger such that even in such a situation like that, anger just doesn't arise in our mind. That would be great. Okay, so that's, we can start looking at the next level of the Lamrim, my favorite one. So, before we move back, so again, even if our goal is enlightenment, becoming fully enlightened Buddha to help all sentient beings, we still need to meditate on these points. Anyone know why? Why are these important to meditate on, even if we're working for enlightenment, Buddhahood? No? Nobody knows, or you're too shy? Guacheng. You must know.
I think that if we ourselves do not want to be free from samsara, then, we won't be wanting to all sentient beings to be free from samsara. So, it's not possible to have bodhicitta if one does not develop renunciation.
It's not possible to
want to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings if we ourselves do not want to be out of samsara.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to recognize the situation of samsara that we are in, and also all these other sentient beings. And we have to recognize that this situation is really bad, really miserable, and wish to free ourselves from it, because when we go on to the next level, the great scope, what we're doing there is we're generating the wish to free all sentient beings from samsara. And that's our reason for becoming a Buddha. I want to become a Buddha, fully enlightened Buddha, so that I can liberate all other sentient beings from samsara. So if we haven't even recognized how samsara is bad and something we need to free ourselves from, we won't be able to generate that wish on behalf of everybody else. Yeah? So, and I mean, there are some people who have that idea. They just want to jump right into the Bodhisattva's path, generate bodhicitta, practice the 6 perfections, and skip over these things, thinking, I don't need this. This is just for those who want to attain nirvana, who want to get themselves out of samsara. But we want to reach enlightenment, so we don't need these meditations. But that's incorrect. We do need to do these meditations, see the suffering nature of samsara, so that we can understand how other beings are suffering, and then have strong compassion, determination to free them from samsara. Okay, so let's just start looking at the next level. This is the advanced level, also known as the Great Scope. So this is really the most important part of the Lamrim, although it does depend on the other 2. But for those who want to reach enlightenment, this shows us how to do that, what we need to do in order to reach enlightenment. So there's different stages of this. First, we contemplate the benefits of bodhicitta, to develop enthusiasm for it. So bodhicitta means the mind of enlightenment, and it's the aspiration to become enlightened, to become a Buddha, with the wish to benefit all sentient beings. So it involves compassion and love and this altruism, this feeling of I want to help every sentient being, not excluding anybody at all, but including all living beings. I want to free every single one of them from all suffering and causes of suffering, and I want to enable them all to achieve happiness, every kind of happiness, up to the highest happiness of enlightenment. So that's what's included in bodhicitta. And everyone is able to develop bodhicitta. It's something we can develop, we can cultivate. For some it might be easier than for others, but everyone can do it. Everyone can develop bodhicitta. But it does take energy, it does take time and effort. So if we see the benefits of bodhicitta, how beneficial it is to do this, to cultivate bodhicitta, and then follow the bodhisattva's path, then we'll be enthusiastic to do that. So usually at the beginning of this section of the Lamrim, there's discussion about the benefits of bodhicitta. And one time I was attending teachings by Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and he talked about how, if we develop bodhicitta and do the things we do with that motivation, even things, you can have the bodhicitta motivation for even the ordinary things we do in our life, like eating or drinking, okay? So drinking a cup of tea, you can have bodhicitta motivation. Like you can think, I want to help all sentient beings be free of all their suffering and find happiness. And in order to do that, I must become a Buddha and then help all of them. But in the meantime, I do have to drink and eat and take care of my body. But instead of eating and drinking just for pleasure, just for the benefit of this life, we can think, I'm eating and drinking in order to keep myself alive and healthy so that I will have energy to continue my Dharma practice and work for enlightenment. So thinking in that way, then eating and drinking become motivated by bodhicitta and become virtuous. They become incredibly virtuous. So even the ordinary things we do in our life, eating, drinking, sleeping, working, going to the doctor, going jogging, those ordinary activities, if we have the bodhicitta motivation when we're doing those things, then they become very virtuous and help us get closer to enlightenment. So, so Lama Zopa Rinpoche was saying that, everything we do with the bodhicitta motivation becomes the cause for enlightenment, but it also becomes the cause for lots of other good things on the way to enlightenment, like happiness in this life. The more we can develop bodhicitta, love, compassion, we're going to be a happier person. Those qualities just make us happy, joyful. And our relationships with others will go better. We'll be able to get along better with other people instead of fighting and quarreling. And so just in this lifetime, we will experience benefits by generating bodhicitta. And then it also becomes the cause for good rebirths in our next life and future lives, right? We're creating the cause to have fortunate rebirths, life after life after life, with good, good resources, good conditions, so we can continue to follow the path. And then it becomes, doing things with bodhicitta motivation becomes the cause for attaining the realizations of the path that enable us to actually progress along the path. And these realizations mean our mind becomes more and more pure and blissful and peaceful. So, we get a lot of benefit from that. And then eventually we become enlightened. And it doesn't stop there, because once we're enlightened, then we have all these skills and abilities to benefit others. We can be working continuously to benefit all sentient beings. So, and all of that comes about because of doing an action with the bodhicitta motivation. So I'm just synthesizing. I don't remember all the words that he used, but sitting there listening to him, it's just like, oh yeah. It's like bodhicitta really is the best thing I could do for myself, but also the best thing I could do for others. It brings all these good results now, next life, future lives, and so on, all the way to enlightenment, and even beyond enlightenment. Because then you're working to help all sentient beings. So I found that explanation incredibly inspiring. I try to remember it. To continue inspiring myself to work at cultivating bodhicitta. So then the second main part of this section is the actual methods for developing bodhicitta. And there are two main methods for generating bodhicitta. One is it's called the sevenfold cause and effect method for generating bodhicitta. Consists of 7 different points that we meditate on, starting with, you start with equanimity, trying to even out your feelings towards other people instead of having a biased attitude like, oh, I like those people, but I don't like them. So if you have that kind of attitude, that's counterproductive, because we have to develop the wish to help all living beings, including our enemies, the people who've harmed us, the people who do harmful things to others, the people we don't like. So we have to learn how to manage our biased attitude and develop equal respect, equal regard for everyone, for all beings. And then after that, you meditate on all beings having been your mother. Buddha spoke about that in the scriptures. He said, samsara has no beginning, and I can't see anybody who hasn't been your mother and your father and your brother and your sister and your teacher. So the idea is we've had so many lives before this one, and we've had every possible relationship with every sentient being, including the mother-child relationship, which is a very special relationship because it's probably the best example of pure and unconditional love. The love that a mother has for her child is just extraordinary. Giving birth to the child, taking care of the child when it's tiny and helpless, and all the way through its life. Mothers just love their children so much and do so much, take such good care of their children. And so if we contemplate that, yeah, every sentient being has done that to me, has been my mother, and has cared for me in all those ways, it's like, oh, wow, amazing. That's a hard one. That they say that's one of the hardest meditation topics in the Lamrim, because we can't remember. We don't remember having that relationship with every sentient being. We don't remember our past lives. So we just have to take the Buddha's word for it. So it's challenging to get to that point. But I find it's still a beautiful idea, even though, yeah, it's hard to believe. But it's just to think about that, to think that every one of you has been my mother. Wow. But also every one of you has been my child. I have been your mother. I find that really interesting to think about too, that, you know, because you hold that little baby in your arms and you're just totally devoted and adoring to that little baby. So I've had that kind of feeling for every one of you and everyone else. Wow, it's pretty amazing, pretty mind-blowing to think about that. And the whole purpose of this meditation is to cultivate a feeling of closeness for others and appreciation for what we have received from them, so that we then want to repay their kindness and benefit them in return. Just like your mother of this life, right? If your mother, whether, yeah, she may not be alive anymore, but if she was alive and if she was in danger, if she was, like the analogy they give is, you know, if she was blind, suffering from dementia, wandering around all on her own in some dangerous place where she could get injured. So if your mother was in that situation, what would you do? Would you say, I'm busy, I'm on my way to play mahjong, or I'm going to the casino? No way. We would just drop everything we're doing and go and help her, right? Because she's my mother. She gave me my body, my life, everything. I owe so much to her. So we have strong feelings of appreciation and love for our mother, and would do anything to help her when she needs help. So if we can think that everyone has been our mother, then we'll be able to generate that feeling for everyone else as well. That feeling of wanting to repay their kindness, wanting to help them. So generally it takes quite a bit of time, a lot of meditation. Pabonka Rinpoche apparently spent a whole year focusing on this meditation in a retreat situation. He was probably doing it numerous times every day before he got it, before he was able to get this experience of seeing everyone as his mother. So yeah, it is something that takes time and energy, but it's worth doing. It's very helpful. As then we go on to think about, okay, what have they done? The kindness they have shown me when they were my mother. So we think about the specific ways that mothers take care of their children. And we think, okay, all these people have done that for me when I was small and helpless. And wow, it's amazing. And then that naturally gives rise to the feeling of wanting to repay their kindness. wanting to do something in return for what we've received from them. And then we think about that, and okay, yes, I want to help them in whatever way I can, but then they're stuck in samsara. All these mothers, they're in samsara, and they're suffering in samsara. So the best thing I can do is to help them get out of samsara, help them become free of the prison of samsara. And then we go on to cultivate love, wishing them to have happiness, compassion, wishing them to be free of suffering. So we're building up those feelings more and more and more and more. And eventually we reach the point where we're willing to say, I will do whatever it takes in order to ensure that they are happy and free of suffering. And how do I do that? Becoming a Buddha, becoming a fully enlightened Buddha. So there's kind of steps that you go through to generate the final result is generating this aspiration to become a Buddha. That's bodhicitta. And they say that when bodhicitta, that aspiration to become a Buddha, to help all living beings, when it arises in your mind sort of spontaneously by itself, you don't have to push it up, you don't have to do anything to bring it up, it just comes up naturally and spontaneously. That's the point at which you become a bodhisattva. That's the meaning of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is someone who has been working quite a while on cultivating these positive thoughts and attitudes towards other beings, and it's become just natural and spontaneous, effortless. And then everything they do is for the purpose of becoming enlightened, for the benefit of all beings. So that's one of the methods for cultivating bodhicitta. There's another method, but maybe I'll talk about that tomorrow. And yeah. And again, we don't have time to go through all these points. I'm just briefly covering them, but they're beautiful. Yeah. So I find any effort I make to cultivate bodhicitta or meditate on any of those points is really beautiful, really inspiring, and definitely beneficial, even here and now. Become much more happy, you feel more like your life has meaning, you have a sense of purpose in your life. Your relationships with others, your way of relating to others improves. So even here and now, you experience benefit. And then, so there's the cultivation of bodhicitta, and then there's the 6 perfections. So the actual way to become a Buddha, how to transform yourself into a Buddha, is by practicing the 6 perfections, which are giving, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. Those are the main practices that one does to become a Buddha. And yeah, there's a lot of points in those to meditate on. So we're kind of running out of time. I don't think we have time for another meditation, but maybe tomorrow morning when we first come together. Because I think for me, morning is a better time to meditate. Mind is more fresh, and so we'll do a meditation at the beginning tomorrow morning on some aspect of bodhicitta. And then, if we have time, I thought it might also be good to do a meditation on the perfection of wisdom. That was again one of my favorite sections working in the book. I love wisdom. So that's all about learning the true nature of things, how things actually exist, especially with regard to our self, I, me. So it's said that a bodhisattva, somebody who aspires to become a Buddha, has 2 main practices that they do. One is called method, And method includes cultivating love and compassion and practicing giving and patience. So it's more on the side of how we relate to other people and other beings, how we see them and how we act with them. And then there's wisdom. The other main side of the practice is wisdom, and that involves cultivating the correct understanding of things, how things exist, like me. How do I exist? This person who wants to become enlightened, help all sentient beings. So is this I something real and solid and independently existing, which is how it appears? There seems to be this real big fat I in there who wants to become a Buddha to help all sentient beings. So is that true? Do I exist in that way or not? Right? So we have to develop a correct understanding of who we are, what we are, how we exist, if we want to follow this path and reach enlightenment. So if we don't have a correct understanding of our own self, our own I, then we won't be able to, even to get out of samsara, even to be free of samsara, is impossible as long as we still have distorted ideas, mistaken ideas about ourselves and about others and everything. So definitely to become a Buddha, we have to clear that up. And wisdom is the practice that will enable us to clear up our mistaken ideas or misconceptions about ourselves and about everyone and everything else. But that's one of the hardest points in the Buddha's teachings and in the Lamrim. But it's very interesting. It's very enticing, very juicy to look at that. So, yeah, so they say these two things, method, which includes love and compassion, patience and so on, and wisdom. They say those are like the two wings of a bird. Have you heard that analogy? That just as a bird needs two wings to fly, if a bird has only one wing, it won't be able to fly, right? So in a similar way, a bodhisattva needs these two wings of method and wisdom to be able to fly to enlightenment, to reach the state of enlightenment. So if you have only one of those, but not the other, you won't make it. You won't be successful in your practice. So there's lots of points in the teachings about this, reminders that you need to have both of these, and they need to kind of complement each other, not, don't omit one or leave one out and only focus on the other. Okay, so there's a little bit of time left if anyone has a question.
Venerable, is this the only way that we have to practice meditation, both methods of meditation, to reach enlightenment?
Sorry, is this the only
way to reach enlightenment, only path? Is there a middle way? Do we do things the middle way or no? It's strictly
this is path. The middle way. So you're asking, is there some other way to reach enlightenment besides going through all of these things? Mm. Well, this is, the word enlightenment can have different meanings. And the word enlightenment can refer to Buddhahood, which is what we're talking about here, full enlightenment, Buddhahood, the state that Buddha achieved. But the term enlightenment is also sometimes used for the state of nirvana or liberation. And that's where you free yourself from samsara, from all the suffering, causes of suffering of samsara. You reach nirvana, you become an arhat. So the word enlightenment is also used for that state as well. So it depends on which enlightenment you want to achieve. If you want the full enlightenment, Buddhahood, Samyak Sambuddha, that state of enlightenment, you do have to do this. You have to do all of these things.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I get to. Okay, what about this? I heard some saying that if you practice the wrong form of or wrong methods of meditation, you may get into a bliss.
You may what?
Get into a bliss. That means,
Bliss.
I think, a higher rank or whatsoever. And then you will fall down again and you have to do all over again. Is this true?
Well, yeah. I mean, Buddhism does talk about these different realms of existence. And this morning I talked about the 3 unfortunate ones that we want to avoid. And then there's higher realms above us, right? There's actually many, they're called Deva realms, the realms of gods, worldly gods. And among them, there's many levels. And there's one, well, it's more like a group of realms called the form realm. Where we are is called the desire realm because we have a lot of desire. And then in the form realm consists of a number of different levels. And to be born in that realm, you have to develop concentration, calm abiding. And then on top of that, you do further practices and attain what are called the jhanas. That's the Pali term jhana. Sanskrit, they say jhana. And so these are special states of mind, very, very deep and blissful states of concentration. And it's possible to attain those here and now in this life. And as a result of attaining those meditative absorptions, you can, if you want to, take birth in those realms. And if you're born in those realms, you have a very long life, you have very little suffering, you very blissful, relatively pure and virtuous compared to our world. Like, for example, in the form realm, nobody ever commits any of the 10 non-virtuous actions. There's no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying. None of those happen in that realm. So I was thinking, oh, they probably don't have police. And they probably don't have hospitals and mental hospitals. They don't need psychiatrists and psychologists and police and judges and all those kind of things. Everyone's just, blissful all the time, and nobody does anything bad. So a very different world than ours. But it's a dead end in terms of spiritual practice because, it's still samsara. You're still in samsara. You haven't eliminated the causes of samsara. You haven't freed yourself from samsara. You may live a very long, peaceful, blissful life, but eventually you die. You come to the end of your life, you die, and then it's not definite where you go next, but you could be born in a lower realm because you still have karma. You haven't completely eliminated your karma. So from the Buddhist point of view, that's like a dead end, and we are encouraged to avoid. It's good to develop those concentrations. You can develop those meditative states, those meditative concentrations, and then use them in your practice for the attainment of enlightenment. But you just want to make sure you don't get born in those realms. Does that make sense? Maybe that's what you're talking about. Yeah, so, yeah, the term in Pali is rupa dhatu, the rupa dhatu. That's the form realm. So we are encouraged in on the Buddhist path to avoid those realms.
So there's a religious method of meditation and there's a non-religious group of meditation, right? Meditating.
What do you mean by religious?
Non-religious type of meditation and the religious type of meditation. You mentioned that in last week's teaching too. There are people who just meditate for health reason, concentration.
Oh, yeah, secular meditation.
So if we do that, do we fall into this category?
If you do secular meditation?
Yes.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the West, for example, who practice mindfulness, but I think they're only thinking about this lifetime. They're not thinking about being born in the form realm. I think they just want to have better health, be more relaxed, and, for this life to go better, for the things of this life to go better. So I think that kind of meditation would not lead to that rebirth. You have to really meditate hard and develop very strong concentration, and then do other things on top of that to be able to take birth in those realms.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Venerable. I was wondering, is analytical meditation similar, or is it more than the normal kind of reasoning and logic and cognitive behavioral therapy in psychology?
So you're asking if analytical meditation is similar to cognitive behavioral therapy? Is that what I couldn't hear every word you were saying, so.
Sorry. Okay. I was wondering if analytical meditation, is it similar, or is it more than the usual logic and reasoning in daily life and cognitive behavioral therapy in psychological treatment?
I mean, I haven't studied cognitive behavioral therapy, so I'm not really in a position to say anything about that, but I have heard that comment made that type of therapy is similar to analytical meditation. But I think, normally people who are receiving that kind of therapy are probably not aiming for enlightenment, right? I think they're just trying to, it's good. I'm not mocking, but, if they have problems in this life, then that kind of therapy can help them resolve those problems and live a more healthy, peaceful life. But it probably doesn't go beyond that to what we're aiming for here. But there could be some similarities. For example, working with anger, or working with attachment, working with jealousy, working with disturbing emotions. Probably a lot of similarity between that type of therapy and what we find in Buddhism. But that's as much as I know, because I haven't studied or practiced that type of therapy. I've met some therapists who are, they're Buddhist as well as therapists, so they practice Buddhist meditation. And some of them have said that they use their Buddhist knowledge in their therapy, and they find it's actually more effective than other methods of therapy that they have learned. So they have, Buddhism has amazing understanding of the mind and the emotions, and So I think we need to stop. We're come to the end of our time. Oh, one more question. Okay.
Is it okay to have one more question? Venerable, I just want to ask wisdom that is mentioned in the intermediate three higher learning.
Sorry?
The wisdom that is one of the three higher trainings.
It's one of the three higher trainings,
in terms of that as a how, right? Versus the great scope, whereby you have the sixth perfection ending with a wisdom.
Yeah.
Is that different level of understanding?
Yeah, because actually the 3 higher trainings, ethics, concentration, and wisdom, all 3 are included in the 6 perfections. You have the perfection of ethics, perfection of concentration, perfection of wisdom. So they're the same, but they would be practiced with a different motivation. So in the case of the middle level, the intermediate level, when you're practicing those, it's for the purpose of attaining nirvana, freeing yourself from samsara. But in the case of the great level, this is the bodhisattva's path. So bodhisattva would be practicing those with the motivation of attaining enlightenment, becoming a Buddha to help all sentient beings. So it depends on what motivation you have for practicing them. So then they would mainly, the practices themselves would be the same, but your motivation would be different. Your reason for doing them. Okay, so now we can stop. So let's dedicate. We'll do the dedication prayers. So feel confident that we have created merit, positive energy, by what we did here this afternoon, coming together with a good motivation, listening, thinking about, meditating on these teachings from the Lamrim. So all this has been very virtuous, very positive, and especially now we're in this time of merit multiplying. So whatever merit we create is multiplied 100 million times. So we created a lot of merit here today. So remember your altruistic intention of wanting to benefit others. Bring that up in your mind, and then let's mentally share all this merit, all this positive energy with all other beings, wishing them to be happy and free of suffering, and wishing them all to reach enlightenment. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Okay. Thank you for coming, and have a good evening, and see you tomorrow.